The headline news on day 3 of the first test in the Border-Gavaskar trophy at Perth is that Virat Kohli got a century. It's been 16 months since the last time he crossed 100, and in those 16 months, Kohli has been visibly edgy, nervy. Every time he walked out to bat, he looked uncertain. It looked like he was carrying this monkey on his back. He's finally laid that to rest, and that's probably, not counting, of course, the runs that India piled up, the best possible news that the dressing room could have had, because it's happening at the start of an important series, and if Virat Kohli comes back into form, India's chances of actually pulling off that 4-0 win that it needs to make it to the World Test Championship improved dramatically. We'll talk about Kohli's century in a bit, but I was thinking of something that Lenin said. To misquote, there are sessions in Test cricket when nothing much seems to happen, and then there are a few minutes where all hell breaks loose. In this particular case, in the post-tea session, there was a manic period of about an hour and a half. It began with an unsolicited drink coming out from the dressing room for the Indian batsman. And immediately after that, Washington Sundar, who until then had been playing a very calm and controlled innings, went down on one knee and tried to hoik Nathan Lyon out of Perth. Missed the ball completely, got bowled. Nitish Kumar Reddy came out and he started playing his strokes from the get-go. But more importantly, at the time that Sundar got out, Kohli was batting on 67 of 116 balls. He rattled off the 33 runs that he needed to complete his century in the next 27 balls. And as it happened, the 4 that he swept behind square of Manas Labuschagne to get to that landmark was also a trigger for the Indian team to declare. About Kohli's innings, it's not the most impressive that you've seen him play. There were plays and misses. There were periods of visible nervousness. He was consciously trying to keep from playing at balls in the 4th channel, where he's got out edging to the cordon quite a few occasions in recent times. He also parked himself on top of the crease as opposed to outside it the way he did in the first innings in Perth. His trigger movement was back and across. He had clearly reset his batting formula, and it paid off. It took a while to pay off. There were times when it looked like he wasn't quite going to make it, but the end result was the Kohli century. It's worth talking about the pitch for a moment because it's now beginning to do all sorts. The odd ball is keeping low. Nathan Lyon was getting grip and turn from one particular end. There are cracks appearing on the wicket. These are not yawning chasms, but more like hairline fractures opening up. And when the ball hits those areas, at one end it is just outside the off stump, at another end it's somewhere around the middle stump and short of a length. The ball tends to scoot through. 2 people who can testify to that are Dhruv Jurel, who got a ball from Pat Cummins that landed in one of those cracks, skidded through, beat the bat and pinged him in front. And the other one is debutant opener for Australia, Nathan McSweeney, who Bumrah took 3 deliveries of the second innings to line McSweeney up, and with the 4th one brought it in sharply. The ball kept low, hit him right in front of middle. Absolutely no doubt about the decision. And McSweeney was gone for naught with Australia yet to even put a run on the board. All of this is happening, and none of this is good news for the team that is chasing 534 in the fourth innings. What is interesting about the declaration was it was always a chance that India would bat through. And when Sundar and Kohli were batting at pretty much walking pace, both just before and just after tea, it looked like that was the idea, that India would bat through the day, probably bat for a few minutes, maybe 15-20 minutes on the fourth morning, just to use the light roller and make sure the pitch didn't settle down too much. But then suddenly the entire thinking seemed to have changed, because there was a clear signal to change gears, and the idea seemed to be to get a few overs in at the Australians at close of play. It worked. Bumrah would have hoped for a lot more than 4 overs, but with the comings and goings, that's all he got. The first to go was Nathan McSweeney, like I said, plumb in front of the wicket to Bumrah. Mohammad Siraj did his bit at the other end when Pat Cummins came out as night watchman. You can't really call him a night watchman because he is a reasonably accomplished batsman, but that was his job, to protect his number 3. Cummins came out and Siraj bowled a beauty in his first over to Cummins. A ball that pitched on length just around the off stump, seamed away late, just beat the edge. You had to be an extraordinarily good batsman to have actually managed to edge that ball. In the second over of his spell, Siraj bowled it a little bit fuller, just a bit closer to the off stump, brought Cummins forward. Cummins poked at it without really moving his feet, and Kohli held a nice low catch in the slips. It's a kind of catch that he had flubbed in the first innings. This time there was absolutely no doubt about it. And out came Marnus Labuschagne. Again, his innings started with a bit of needle between him and Siraj. At the other end, Bumrah came in, and again, the same kind of delivery just outside the off stump, coming in just that shade, pinning Labuschagne onto the front foot. The error that the batsman made was that he had taken the off stump guard and he looked to leave without even attempting to play a shot. The point of impact therefore did not matter, and on the DRS, when Labuschagne reviewed, the ball was clearly hitting the somewhere near the middle stump, really. It was keeping that low, and that was Labuschagne gone. The morning session belonged to Rahul and to Yashasvi Jaiswal. Rahul really looked the most composed of the Indian batsmen on view today. He was stroking freely. There was a series of cover drives that he unfolded through. They were a treat to watch. Foot well forward, high leading elbow, meeting the ball right under the eye line, easing the ball through without really having to hit it. It seemed a bit of a pity that he got out when he did. An edge into the cordon was not something that you expected. The way he was playing, that is. Jaiswal batted with calm control on occasion, and sometimes with that reckless, almost reckless impetuousness that characterizes him. There were slashes over the slip cordon and over point. There was a couple of occasions when he wanted to go after Lion and then had to bail out of his shots. But in between that, there was some glorious stroke play. He added 71 runs to the 90 not out that was his overnight score, and he was looking really good for a double century when again that impetuousness took over. Mitchell Marsh bowled one outside his off stump. It was short, it was wide, it wasn't really lifting all that much. Jaiswal slashed at it and picked out Stephen Smith at point. there was a in the second session there was a bit of a mini collapse, and it's interesting because when you're sitting in the dressing room and you're watching two batsmen out there scoring runs for fun, you think it's easy. But on a pitch like this, you actually have to come out and get set, get a sense of what the pitch is doing before you can play shots. And the wickets that fell immediately after Jaiswal were all largely the result of not really getting set before trying something, particularly Rishabh Pant. He had faced 3 balls. The Aussies played on his ego. They brought Nathan Lyon on. The very first ball of Lyon's, Pant went racing down the track. He was almost halfway down the track when he swung at the ball. Normally, Pant leaves his forward movement until the bowler is just on the point of release. This time he telegraphed it. Lyon saw it, bowled it wider of the stumps. Pant swung at it but couldn't get his bat to it, and Alex Carey had an easy stumping to complete. The thing is, that's how Pant plays, and it seems unfair to blame a batsman when he gets out, playing exactly the way he plays when he pulls India out of hole time and again. But here the thing is, he wasn't set. That was one. 2, the predetermination was evident not just to those of us watching, but also evident to the bowler. And this was ego at work. It was like, I can't let Lyon bowl to me. And that is probably why he'll cop a bit of flack. Though in the final analysis, it didn't make much of a difference. India got way more runs than it really needs. Dhruv Jurel wasn't impetuous the way Pant was, but his feet weren't moving, and at the point where he got pinged, he took a half step back, then he took a half step forward. He ended up exactly where he was before and was in no position to play the ball. The other thing that was noticeable today was, at one point they showed the beehive of the Australian bowlers, and a startling statistic was that just 6% of the deliveries sent down by Australia's bowlers were actually hitting the stumps. The rest of them were pretty much around the lower rib cage, a lot of them, a vast majority of them, and some the classic short balls flying over the head. 6% of deliveries across 134 or so overs is not the way you get wickets on tracks like this. And a demonstration of that came from Bumrah. He only bowled, 14 deliveries? Out of that, he got 2 batsmen pinged in front because he pulled his length much further forward and let the pitch do the rest of the work. Australia finds itself in a jam. It's got 522 runs more to get. It has only 7 wickets in hand. The next batsman should be Stephen Smith, whose form has occasioned a lot of funny comments. I remember there was a time when Michael Vaughan said something about Steve Smith has finally found his eyes. They were asking about whether he had found his hands so often that Pat Cummins, before the match began, made this tongue-in-cheek remark that Stephen Smith's hands have been found and they have reached Perth. A question is whether he can find his bat and his feet. Tomorrow should, in all likelihood, be the last day of the match, because given the way the wicket is behaving, given the way the Indian bowlers are bowling, and given also the fact that Bumrah and Siraj get to come back early tomorrow morning with the new ball just under 5 overs old, chances are high that India will run through the Australian batting lineup. And like I said, in context of the bowling, Australia really has itself to blame for the plight that it finds itself in, first with the ball and then with the bat. Tomorrow should be fun to watch if you're an Indian fan. We'll be back here with a recap after the match. Take care.